Hi, Felicity. It's really nice to have you with us.
Right.
Felicity is a friend of mine, and we got to know each other 2 years ago when I moved here, and she was involved with Ashbourne Churches Together, where she's their secretary. And she and I started to chat, and we were talking about prayer one day, and I said how I miss the people I prayed with, and so we ended up starting to pray with each other most weeks. So we'll always end up having things to do and get distracted. But we tend to pray out in the open doors. And so I asked Felicity if she might talk to me about that. But before she does that, just to explain, she's married to Nick and she has two children, two boys, and they've lived in Ashbourne about 8 years now, and she's a primary school teacher and just gone back to work in the last year, not full time. But yeah, so over to Felicity. First of all, Felicity, what we wanted to really talk to you about is prayer and the outdoors. And I wondered if you might tell me, first of all, how it all started for you.
I was a Christian in London years ago, and there was a group of people who wanted to prayer walk the city in that sort of old-fashioned idea, I suppose, doing a chunk each night, going right around the whole of London. And so I joined in with them. And then sometimes they'd go up high where you could see out over the city, and it helped us to pray for different people and different groups that we were involved with as we could look out over the city.
Yeah, brilliant. And then did that change when you moved to Derbyshire, or were there other contexts where you were outside as well?
It had opened up the idea that you could pray out loud outside, because before I'd always prayed indoors. And then I was involved in different missions, like on a housing estate. We wanted to do some stuff in the summer and do kids' games and things. And so we would go and pray in the weeks leading up to the mission. We'd go and walk through the estate and pray. And I saw people doing it really naturally. So as people came up to them to say hi, they'd just stop and have a chat, and then we'd walk on and pray. And so it would be like a conversation with God that we were all having. And I'd grown up where you say your prayer and then you finish with amen, and then another person has a go, and that was fine. And this introduced me to a very different, freer way where people would begin to talk about what was on their heart to God, and other people would chip in, more like a natural conversation between people. Although we were always focused on God and addressing him and talking to him about what was on our mind. So that was a new thing for me, to pray outdoors. And then obviously living somewhere like Ashbourne, you and I go for a walk out into the fields, and we're not surrounded by man-made stuff, we're in God's creation.
Tell me about that.
So it makes me realize that when I pray out in the fields, you're suddenly confronted with God's majesty and his power. Even if it's lashing down with rain, you see his might and his creativity and the diverse things that he's made. So then, I might think, I'll go for a walk, I need to pray about various things. But then when I get there, you hit Dovedale or whatever, I end up praising. So forget my list. I end up, wow, God, look at this. Look at what you've made. You're amazing. He's the business. Look what he's done. So I end up praising. And I suppose the biggest thing that I think I've learned is that God changes me more than anything I'm praying about. So he'll change my list then, my idea of what I wanted to pray about. I'll begin praising him, and he's changing my heart. And then, yes, I'll probably get round to mentioning the things that I was going to, but it will often be in a very different attitude than I set off initially.
Oh, that's lovely. You mentioned something about a phone at some point.
So it's because I'm praying out loud. I want to pray out loud because if I just pray in my head, then I end up just thinking. So I get distracted. So I'll begin talking to God, and then my mind will wander and I'll end up just thinking. So I prefer to talk out loud. It makes me think about what I'm saying and phrase it and talk to him and address God. But then I don't want to look like a weirdo when I'm outside. So sometimes I just have my phone and it's not on, but I'm just, particularly if there's other walkers or ramblers around or farmers or whatever, then sometimes I'll just pull out my phone and then I can talk to God. So if you see me walking alone out in the hills on the phone, I may just be praying.
Oh, lovely. Thank you so much. That was wonderful, Felicity.
You're welcome.
Thank you for taking part.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for asking me.
Mm.